Hello and welcome to this video, and on this video I'm going to be ranking the greatest progressive rock bands of all time. And by greatest I mean greatest, not my favourite. If it was my favourites then we would have Gong on the list, we would have Hatfield on the North. Right, what we're talking about is the bands that were the most successful and the most innovative and the most important in terms of creating the genre itself, influence. I'm also not going to bring in any bands that I consider progressive rock, but I know the general audience don't, so I'm not going to be counting Led Zeppelin, I'm not going to be counting Kate Bush, who I feel are as prog as any other band in that genre, but for some reason don't normally get lumped in. So these are going to be hopefully bands where everyone says, yeah, that's a definite prog rock band, and we don't get into that argument that so happens when we start talking about prog, when, you know, people are saying, well, I don't think they were prog, they shouldn't be on the list. I'm sure it will even happen with some of these bands I've got right now that I would say are 100% right in the middle prog. Okay, so let's just jump straight in at number 10. Now, I want you to remember as we go through this video that these aren't my favourite bands, they're the ones I think are the greatest, the most important. Okay? When I came up with this list, I thought it's got to be very important to concentrate on the 70s prog bands, the ones that created the genre. But I felt I needed to represent at least the 40 years after that period. And I think one of the most important bands for basically keeping progressive rock, you know, as an idea and as a commercial entity on the map would be Marillion. So at number 10 I have put Marillion. Now those of you who watch my videos will know that at this point I will hold an album up and say this is my number 10. Now I cannot hold a Marillion album because I don't own a Marillion album. Okay? So why am I on here? Why do I have any authority to talk about this band? Well, no, because I've never listened to them. So I'm going to tell you my Marillion story and then I will move on. And then all of you can tell me how great Marillion is, right? But the reason I haven't got a Marillion album is because when I listened to them, I didn't particularly like them, okay? And when was that? Right back in the early 80s. In the UK, we had a magazine called Kerrang, and in that magazine, they used to cover unsigned, up-and-coming bands. And I remember reading an article about a band that were either called Silmarillion or had just changed their name to Marillion. And I read about them and I could see the guy with the makeup on the face. I thought this looks really exciting, this is my sort of thing, because I was a big prog fan. So I went and waited, and eventually I may even have heard Market Square Heroes first. Very early on I heard them. And when I heard them I went, oh, they're like Genesis, but without the musicianship. That was my honest opinion about that band at that time. A friend of mine then got script for A Jester's Tea. I went around the house and I listened to it. I didn't hate it, I liked it because it sounded Genesis-y and I really love Genesis. But I got all the Genesis albums, I didn't feel I needed to buy those albums. So that went by the wayside. I explored the neo-prog movement that had come out, and I felt that, you know, bands like especially Palace and IQ I liked a lot more. Pendragon were good, Marillion, 12th Night, you know, I explored that and I was interested by it. But Marillion never really, I never became a fan, you know. As time has gone on, and eventually, of course, I became the drummer with IQ. I played with guys from Palace, I played with guys from Pendragon. I've come into contact with many of the members of Marillion, and I've realised what an important band they are in terms of, you know, selling hundreds of thousands, if not millions of albums in the 80s with, you know, under the progressive rock genre. They managed to hold this genre together. And I think another thing they need to get a mention for is their move to fan funding, to running their own label and controlling their own music, right? One of the things about progressive rock is always had a do-it-yourself ethos. And Marillion have that in buckets, and they are an absolute influence to any artist. Any artist now coming up who is self-funded, that is using fan funding, that anyone who's releasing online on Bandcamp, you owe some of your success to what Marillion pioneered. When the last album came out, I thought I'll check it out, and I listened to it and I liked it. They are a very competent, able band, you know, that can deliver the goods. Is it the goods that I like to listen to? No, because it's a little bit too conservative. They weren't conservative in the 80s. They were cutting edge. And the thing I didn't get about Marillion when I first heard those early records was the punk ethos that was in all neo-prog, okay? Which I think was very, very important. So it wasn't exactly like Genesis. It was something else, and it was right for the time. So at 10, I'm going to give a shout out to Marillion and the whole neo-prog movement, you know, IQ Palace, 12th Night, and all those bands for being so important to keep this genre going. And I wonder whether we would still have that genre now, and we would be talking about it in the same way if it wasn't for those bands. So at number 10, we have Marillion. Now at number 9, I have another band that I'm not going to hold an album up, but I do own one album by them. And that's Images and Words by Dream Theater, okay? So, again, Dream Theater, it's a similar story for me. I think that Dream Theater, over the last 30 years, is probably the most important progressive rock band on the planet. They've sold lots of records, they've made lots of people's fans of that genre. They've introduced people from heavy metal, you know, from sort of the muso end of the market, and brought them in, and they have introduced those people to this incredible genre. There's been so many spin-off bands from this band. Really, really incredible. Now, again, this is not a band that I'm particularly a huge fan of, yet I have a contact with them, a direct contact. So in the early 90s, when they first emerged, I think they'd done a couple of albums. Some of my students started saying, Andy, you need to check out this band. They're really incredible musicianship. And I checked them out, and it was incredible musicianship. To me, it sounded like a cross between Iron Maiden and Rush. I felt like I'd heard it before. I went and bought Images and Words, I think is when that album came out. I listened to it. I liked it. I didn't like it enough to buy any other album after that. And that was, you know, that was my contact with Dream Theater. Years later, when I was playing in Frost, you know, Dream Theater became fans of Frost and invited us on a tour with them. And I can remember going to the first gig, and we sound checked, then we went off stage, and then they started sound checking, and when I saw them play, my jaw hit the floor. What an incredible band, what an incredible, you know, bunch of virtuoso musicians, but also the chemistry. This is back when Mike Portnoy was still in the band as well, but the chemistry between the band, an incredible band, and what a body of work. Marillion and Dream Theater, I don't hate them, I don't even dislike them, or I do like them. I could put an album on and enjoy them, but I am not mega fans, but their importance to the genre is so important, and hopefully with these two bands at 10 and 9, I've been able to sort of at least represent the last 40 years of this genre. But one of the things I would like to point out is I think the reason why I didn't like, on first listening, these two bands enough to buy anything by them and to commit to being a fan, was because when I was a youngster and I first heard Yes and Genesis and King Crimson, it was the how different they were. It was the fact that they were progressive. It was the fact that they seemed to be taking the rock genre and exploding it out. That was what I find exciting about progressive rock. I don't find it exciting when someone just trots out the cliches that people have done before, which you could almost call that prog rock, and there's a lot of that nowadays. I heard that a little bit with Marillion and Genesis. Looking back, I can now see that, you know, Dream Theater were very clever to actually take contemporary heavy metal influences at the time and pull those in to the prog genre, which of course no one had done before. And as I said with Marillion, it's the punk ethos that's actually there with that band, and also their ability to write hit records. So have I talked about them enough? Shall we move on? I'm going to move on to, right, who I've got at number 8. And it's someone I do own albums by. You will be, thankful to know. In fact, I own a lot of albums by this guy because I'm a mega fan, and that is Frank Zappa. Okay? When you talk about progressive rock, for the most part, I feel we're talking about English/British bands. There's some fantastic European bands like Magma, Can, Faust, Gong, half English, half French. Focus were very close to making this list, believe me, they were. And I would like to put them on to represent, European prog. When it comes to prog from the United States of America, we have Kansas, Styx, and Todd Rundgren, Utopia. There's some fantastic stuff there, but nothing in the same league as the great big legendary British prog bands, except for Frank. Frank Zappa is an absolute progressive monolith. He stands there, as a creator of this genre, as a huge influence on many of the bands that we're about to talk to now, right? And he's such a giant of music that we can't even fit what he does in the progressive genre. It's still not wide enough for what this man does. He's also jazz fusion, he's modern classical, he's rock, he's heavy metal, he's blues, he's classical. This is a true progressive rock artist here, right? Everything I feel he has done is progressive because it's in the very nature of what he does. As an artist, if I was rating, the most important artist of all time, he would actually be rating higher than number 8. The reason why he hasn't gone that much higher is because I think we're still talking about someone who is at the fringes of the genre. And the reason for that is because his innovations come first. He pioneers something in the mid-60s that actually influenced the Beatles, that actually influences King Crimson, that influences Gentle Giant, that influences all those bands. This is one of the first guys to make a concept album, to make a double studio album. He's one of the first, artists to really push the multi-tracking, classical arrangements, the integration of improvisation with classical forms, which a band like Soft Machine, you think of Soft Machine, which is full on prog, and I nearly put Soft Machine in the list. They haven't made this list, and this week I put on Third, which is one of the most important, influential albums to the progressive rock genre, and I put it on and listened to it, and I went, yeah, this sounds like they've been listening to Uncle Meat. Without Zappa, there's no Soft Machine, basically. To my ears, they might not admit it, or maybe they do, I don't know. But this guy's here first, and in my mind, doing it better than them. This is a huge influence. At number 8, Frank Zappa. Right, what have we got at number 7? Right, again, I wish I could hold an album up for this band. And this is possibly the first time I've talked about this band on this channel, and it is one of my favourite bands of all time. Okay, so why haven't I got any albums by them? And the reason is because with this band, I didn't discover them when I was in my classic vinyl and CD buying period. I discovered them much later and realised I'd made a huge mistake, because I really wished I'd heard this band when I was young and listening to progressive rock, because I think it would have become my favourite band of all time. And that band is Gentle Giant. Okay? When I was very young, I read about Gentle Giant. I went in to a record shop to buy an album by them. I'm pretty sure it was Octopus. I was put off by the name Gentle Giant. I thought it was going to sound sort of folky, because when you buy albums and you realise you've made a mistake and you've gone and bought an album by somebody, I don't know, Bachman Turner Overdrive or something like that, and it wasn't quite what you expected. So I never bought an album by Gentle Giant. Okay, years later, I would say late 90s. Okay, when the internet and all that thing where you could start to hear tracks online for free, I thought, well, I've never listened to Gentle Giant, so I'll give them a listen. And I think the first album I heard was Acquiring the Taste. You know, so I had a digital. I think I downloaded a digital copy of Acquiring a Taste, and I can remember putting that album on, and absolutely being astonished. In my adult life, the band that's probably astonished me the most as a grown-up working pro musician that I never heard before would be Gentle Giant, and possibly the Cardiacs, which is another one of my favourite bands that I missed out on as a youngster. These are terrible, guilty admissions. So I got Acquiring the Taste, and I was astonished by this. To me, this puts every other progressive rock band in the corner. Right? There's bands who are trying to be progressive, and they do a brilliant job. They're trying to take in classical influences. They're trying to take modern classical into jazz influence. They're trying to do that, you know, and they do it very, very well. With Gentle Giant, you feel like they do it with absolute commitment and superiority. You know, this feels the equal weight of modern classical music. Whereas when we listen to someone like Yes, we know that it's incredible rock music because of the influence that's coming in from classical music. But I feel that with Zappa and with Gentle Giant, you could score that stuff for orchestra and it would stand up as incredible composition. That album, Acquiring the Taste, blew me away. So I then went and checked out another album. I think I got Power and the Glory, Octopus, and every album was as good as the other albums. They were all absolutely incredible, with a few dodgy ones here and there which we won't get into. I am preparing at the moment a top 10 with my friend Steve Gould, the Progmeister. I'm another expert on this because, you know, with a lot of these bands I talk about, I can go right back to my, you know, early adolescence. You know, I've been listening to these bands for 40 years, so when I do a top 10, I'm pretty sure that I can bring some authority. With Gentle Giant, I know every single album, I've listed them inside out, but I don't feel I can talk with the authority, so I'm bringing in my friend Steve Gould. If he gets around to it, Steve, are you watching this video? Come on, we got to get this Gentle Giant top 10. So important, right. So yeah, at number, where are we? At number 7, we have Gentle Giant. Now, this video is going to be in 2 parts. The reason is because my videos are always 20 minutes long, and I've just noticed we nearly got a 20 minutes up, so this is going to take some time, and it deserves the time. So this is definitely going to be part 1, and I've got 3 minutes to talk about the next band, which is going to be at number 6. All right. So who have I got at number 6? We have Rush, and I've pulled out probably their most proggy album. Are Rush a prog band after 1982? They have their moments. But in the 1970s, right, not only is this one of the biggest bands on the planet, one of the great prog bands, you know, big selling prog bands, one of the most innovative prog bands. Not only have they got a huge fan base that's, you know, goes over the whole world, and they are not a British prog band. This is one of the bona fide great prog bands of all time that are from outside Britain. But also, they're so innovative for bringing heavy rock, heavy metal into the genre. Which, if you think about that now, most bands working in this genre now are prog metal bands. You know, if you take the contemporary prog metal bands out of the equation, I reckon we'd lose about 2/3 of the prog bands working at the moment. And the big sellers, you know, the bands like Animals as Leaders, you know, Dream Theater, so many bands, I know, even Porcupine Tree, all these bands that are still flying the flag for prog, how much influence comes from Rush and that integration of heavy metal riffs into the prog genre. Also, the virtuosity. I mean, Neil Peart is, or was, he still is the go-to drummer for prog drumming. I think he's possibly the greatest progressive rock drummer. I am preparing a list of the greatest prog drummers, the greatest prog guitarists, because I really want to talk about prog a lot more. So, absolutely incredible band, and they progressed. They progressed right to the end. They progressed to the point where they weren't afraid to leave prog behind, but still be pushing the genre and pushing the boundaries in so many ways. Anyway, so that's the end of part 1 of the 10 greatest progressive rock bands of all time. So we've had at number 10 Marillion, at number 9 Dream Theater, at number 8 Frank Zappa, at number 7 Gentle Giant, and number 6 Rush. And on the next video we'll be counting down the big 5. Right, so I have albums for all those bands that I can hold up, but only just, because there might be a few more surprises about bands I'm not so keen on that I have still put in the top 10. Anyway, we will stop there and we will move on. So you've watched this, you'll have to wait a couple of days if you watched it, because the next video will be coming out very soon. I'll see you soon on that video. Thanks for watching.